Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us here on ESPN Esports. You are watching us on YouTube and on Twitter. This is Search and Destroy, our ESPN Call of Duty League program. Also available in podcast form, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. You can now listen to this show in audio form. Honestly, I thought I was going to do this show solo. However, we do have a last-minute join, and he returns to the show, and I'm very excited about it because if you know anything about Call of Duty League, and now Valorant too, by the way, you definitely know this man's stats, and that is Easy Mac, who works with the Atlanta FaZe, is basically their head statistician, and also, for free, puts a lot of work to provide us all with a bunch of stats every single tournament. Welcome back to Search and Destroy and ESPN Esports, my friend. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me on again.
So we have a lot to digest. Weekend, a home series this past weekend, a home series coming up. Are you a fan of the tournaments being bunched together, or do you prefer there being time in between tournaments?
I think I actually like it when it's bunched together like this. It's kind of like rapid fire. You have one weekend, and then you have a couple days to make adjustments, and then you can't really cool off. You can't lose form, and then you're back at it again. So I kind of like it better like this.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Well, just to go through the schedule, what's going to happen for the rest of the season, we have 4 home series left. The next one is going to be this weekend. That's going to be the Paris Legion home series weekend. And I understand that the times are actually going to be adjusted to account for the European fans. So the first matchup will actually be on Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So note the change in time. It's going to be altered. So the Atlanta FaZe matchup against Toronto is going to be 5:30 p.m. Eastern, normally much earlier than they would normally play. So keep that in mind when you check out the schedule. But then, couple weekends off, back in New York on July 10th to 12th. Then right away, London home series, July 17th to 19th. And then another one, Toronto, July 24th to 26th. So we are ending the season hot as we go into the championships, which all teams are qualified for. As we know, the format has been altered, but it's very important, right? Like Atlanta, as much as we're going to talk about what happened this past weekend, they're still at the top of the standings, Easy Mac. But do the players feel this? Are they feeling the pressure from teams that are trying to like climb up to the top there? And is it important for them to keep that top position going into playoffs?
So I really wanted to leave this next weekend with 80 points combined after this past weekend and this one. So that would mean we would have to win this next event to reach that 80-point total for us. But it was actually not too bad this past weekend because Chicago and Dallas fell early. So we actually gained first technically on the points, and Dallas is still I think 30 behind us, and now Chicago's 10. But that was really nice. But it still does leave a little bit of pressure for at least 2 of the tournaments. We have to make another grand final and probably win one to secure top 2, which is highly important for the end of the year. It's really the only thing that matters. So yeah, I mean, there's no pressure on the players. It's more of just outside pressure that you kind of feel, but it's still not the end of the world even if we get third, but we definitely want that first place finish.
Yeah, I mean, look, spoiler alert, Florida won the last weekend. They're still in 4th place, right, with 150 points, but they leapfrog over the Røkkr, who have been struggling as of late, not quite getting the results that they are looking for at 120 points. Atlanta leading the way with 200. So let's break down the weekend. The elephant in the room, I'm sure for some, is going to be that series against Seattle. And Seattle, Atlanta, they go into Seattle have a lead, and then all of a sudden there's this giant delay. So whatever you can tell us, because I'm actually still not clear what exactly happened. What can you share with us? Why did this happen?
So I guess the broadcast equipment went down. So I guess this year they're using technology that wasn't meant for this year. It's supposed to be for next year, I guess. There's a whole article about it. I think it was on Esports Insider. It was on some publication where they talked about how complicated it is, and I guess it went down. I didn't even know what was happening. I was texting Chris and Arda the entire time trying to figure it out. But I guess it went down, and they couldn't get it up in time. I guess if you go back to map 2, you can. There's like audio. There's a whole bunch of audio mistakes. The casters are cutting in and out. But yeah, I guess a 40-minute wait is still pretty ridiculous. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it.
So just to be clear, there was no issues on the player end. Like
Nope.
the players, the teams were ready to go. This was a broadcast concern, and 45 minutes later they were able to bring the broadcast back up.
Yeah, which is
So,
why they put in the new rule where it's going to be 15 plus 5 now. So even if the broadcast can't be up, if it's not on the players' end, then we'll play without a broadcast, which probably should have happened anyways because 45 minutes is just not. It's like resetting the button for a series. You really don't. You lose all momentum. You lose everything. So it was too long of a wait for both teams.
so I was gonna say, I mean, like, let's talk about the momentum. They're not taking anything away from the victory here, but Seattle was up 2-0, right? Like, what was said? I assume that in that 45 minutes you can talk to the team. Like, it's not like you have to go to a neutral corner in boxing after a knockdown. Like, I'm assuming you can have
No, you still
communication, right? So like, it's almost as if it's an advantage for both teams in a way, particularly for Atlanta in this situation. Okay, here's what happened in game 1. Here's what happened in game 2. Like, how much coaching was happening in that 45 minutes?
So I know the guys don't really like to talk about the X's and O's mid-series like that because you just kind of that map happened, move on to the next one, focus up. So I guess like they were like super loose because at this point in the tournament we'd only lost 2 maps and it was like let's just keep spirits high. We're not going to lose this. I guess when they got into the call, they were still high spirits. They're still in good mood. Like they barely lost the gun runner. We got smoked on the cave. So like it was still bad. But they were still really high vibes going into the third map. They still thought they were going to win 3-2 right off the rip. Like we could have played that map right after, and like no one was down. Everyone was still high energy. So, but yeah, it was still weird. It was still weird to be just sitting there, just waiting and waiting and waiting.
It's really good that that rule is in because it is, especially if it's not a concern technologically with the teams. That's one thing, but for it to be the broadcast, I like that. At least to Call of Duty League's credit, at least there's now a rule. If it can't be broadcast, all right, fine, just play the game to at least maintain the integrity of the series. Which is
what I like about the league.
Yes.
The league's they're good at reacting. It's just developing a proactive responses to stuff, which is probably going to be coming next year. They're going to be building up on that. This year they're good at reacting, but it's like that should have been a concern as soon as the online league started. I think that was kind of overlooked, but I'm glad it's there now.
Look, I think I don't necessarily fit the Call of Duty League fan mold because I don't have too much drama attached. You know, like I'm not a drama feeder in the sense, but like I give them a pass because we're in a pandemic, right? Like stuff's going to happen. And like, honestly, like you said, there were server issues in the Dallas home series. Okay, more servers were added. Then they actually proactively added even more servers. And then they added certain rules and regulations to go in place. And now we're seeing a rule with broadcast. Like there's at least they're trying. So I'm gonna say that look, we're in extraordinary times. This is not ideal for anybody, but at least it's happening. So good on that. One thing that we saw on the broadcast, I want to get your thoughts on this. I never thought we'd see the day where we'd be talking about gentlemen's agreements on a broadcast, right? Like I remember a day where like this was like taboo, and like I can tell you from my own personal experience that we have been asked to shy away from gentlemen's agreements by Call of Duty League related personnel. So now,
I was shocked.
Like, why the 180, you think? Is there any explanation? Have you heard anything?
I think, first off, I think it's a good thing, kind of, that they're recognizing it and speaking up about it. Because what I don't like is all these GAs pass and they come to fruition, but no one really talks about why and like why they're in place, why they need to be there, like why the players are making these decisions. So it's kind of just like it happens behind closed doors and no one knows. And now the league's kind of shining the light on rule changes because those GAs actually were put into effect into the rule set, I believe, a couple days before the tournament. So they weren't even GAs technically anymore. But yeah, it's kind of funny to see them do that 180 and like talk about it. But also, I think it's a good thing because you're shining light on the reasoning behind it. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag for me.
If it were up to you, would that communication on the broadcast continue? If it were up to you,
I would do it in different ways.
Happen?
Yeah, I would do it in a different way. I would do like. I'm a big fan of NHL. So when the NHL, when you break a rule, when you get fined, they make like these really in-depth videos. It used to be, I think it was Jeremy Roenick used to do it, where he would talk about, okay, in this instance, you see the high stick, and they play videos on it. They say why it's against the rules. I would like to see, like, for instance, a lot of like people who watch Warzone, like the monolithic suppressor. And there's a reason why that's banned, or was GA'd, now banned. It's because it increases the range while hiding your shots. And it'd be nice to have a pro player talk about that to the viewers and explain why it's banned, explain why it's GA'd, and why it's getting put into the rule set, instead of kind of like, this is the list. It's kind of, I would like an explanation behind it, just for like future videos, so like everyone starts to understand why it's happening.
How on earth did I not know you're a hockey fan? Who's your team?
Rangers.
Oh, hey, let me show you something actually. I'm just gonna grab something from my so I used to work at MSG Networks, who carry the Rangers, and this was one of the parting gifts I got. They gave me I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah.
This is a VHS tape of the '94 Stanley Cup run.
That is awesome.
That aired on MSG Networks, and it's Messier on the front holding the Stanley Cup, and that famous call from Sam Rosen, who's their longtime announcer. Oh, baby, and this one will last a lifetime. Anyway,
that's awesome.
So, listen, I'm just gonna leave that there. We have a lot to talk about off camera, but let's get back to Call of Duty League. That's good to know, man. We're gonna have a lot of hockey talks, I'm sure. So we're gonna come back to the tournament in a little bit. But let's talk about Warzone weekend. That was a lot of fun. The first tournament was a completely different vibe than the second weekend. The first weekend was, all right, we're Paris Legion. We're just going to find a house, and the shrinking circles are going to be in our favor, and we're just going to camp this house, and we're going to make some dinner, and we're going to watch some Netflix, and we're going to wait for opponents to come to us, right, Austin? And then all of a sudden, this one, we get like these insane highlights.
Yeah, a lot of action this time around. It's like it was definitely different because, first off, I love how they kind of took the format of the NBA All-Star game, where they had like the drafts and decided that, you know, let's draft teams. That's an awesome idea. And then they try to push the players to, you know, have more high action plays instead of just, you know, doing the recons and chilling. So that helps out a lot. And I think the players themselves didn't want to like disappoint. So then you start seeing more and more like high stakes plays, more risk, more reward. So this weekend was really fun to watch. I can't wait. I think it's going to keep getting better and better and better as the weeks go on. Definitely, this was my favorite one so far out of the two.
Yeah, so the format changes we all know is that there were team captains, and they picked their own teams of 4 in the available pool of talent. And Team Ricky that ended up winning was Ricky, Shocks, Slacked, and Lacefield. And you're seeing some highlights here of the weekend as it's going along. We're going to show you, if you haven't seen it, in just a second. The Lacefield just has probably like one of the coolest plays I've ever seen. So not this one. We'll play it in a second, Jarrett, our producer behind the scenes here. But the other Lacefield highlight,
it's so many.
Easy Mac, is like one of the most ingenious things I've seen. Can you just describe it for us?
So he saw a helicopter behind the bunker. He went up and decided, instead of using it, I'm going to use it as a trap. Threw up a C4 on the tail, and then as soon as Clayster came looking for mode of transportation, hops in the helicopter. And Lacefield was sitting up in the trees watching him go right into it. And as soon as he took off, Lacefield triggered it. It was my favorite thing just to see Clay sitting there like speechless, didn't know what happened.
Like one of the goats of Call of Duty, right? Like one of the best to ever do it is just like, what the hell just happened to me? Like, but the best part was he didn't see the C4. Like,
I don't know how.
Hidden on the helicopter? Yeah, I didn't know if it was well hidden on the helicopter, or he just didn't notice it when he got in, or maybe he didn't think that would ever be a play. I don't know.
I just didn't even think he was looking for it, and just took off, and probably thought he got RPG'd at first, and then was like, what happened?
Yeah, that was amazing. So Lacefield, that was one of Lacefield's best plays as part of the weekend. However, another incredible play that he had involved an entire team wipe. Here it is.
There's a reason why he was one of your Game Fuel featured players. Again, for Ricky, this is tried and tested. You know you need information on these players, and wow, look at his position from Lacefield. C4 from this high up. Nice throw, we like that, but... Whoa! What was that throw? Look at this kill cam! Dude, and Octane's face says it the best. He just threw a C4 from a chopper. I've literally not seen that in Warzone yet. What a throw that was. He took out an entire team. Lace.
Like, I don't even think that qualifies as a Kobe. It was more of a lob, right? It was just like a layup in a way. Like, he just happened to drop it at the right ball. It was amazing.
It was perfect. It was a Tom Brady throw right there.
Wasn't it really? It was just like whoop, laser beam. Amazing.
Perfect.
Yes, we're gonna look forward to other Warzone weekends. Hopefully, they experiment a little bit. This is their avenue to get creative. They meaning Call of Duty League, right? I mean, this is doing well. The players, it seems like the players are enjoying it. Are the FaZe players enjoying this?
They enjoy it. They like it because they play a lot of Warzone in their free time anyways. So just trying to like they don't take it too like seriously. Like they're not angry when they don't win. They're trying to make more big plays and they're trying to do something cool. But yeah, they actually like doing it. I think it's really fun. I love it. I love watching these. It's also I really appreciate how they do it beforehand too. So they're able to edit it really nicely and put in the team comms, put in all the kill cams, being able to put all the gulags in. Like I think the production value is outstanding for these.
You know what? Speaking of gulags, the first one had a Zuma versus Formal gulag. And it just got me thinking, like, you know what would be awesome was it would be like a gulag tournament.
Yep,
Like
that would be
imagine, like,
sick.
you know what I mean? Like pick 16 players and just put them in a single elimination best of 5 or best of 7 gulag tournament. I don't know how they would do
should have done
that,
that.
but
I think they should do it in gunfight. Just have gunfight best of 1 rounds,
yeah.
and then you
Yeah.
can do either solos or duos, and just have a little bracket style tourney. I think it would be sick.
Yeah, we should pitch that. Or we should do it and then sell it to Call of Duty League. That's what
There you go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Easy Mac and Arda Enterprises. AO,
We're ahead of the
since our
curve.
initials are the same, right? We can just call it AO Incorporated. Perfect.
I like it. There we go.
I love how we got business ideas. We got IT people, all right? Okay, let's talk about the Call of Duty League weekend. The Florida Mutineers, we mentioned it. Obviously, everybody knows that they won the Minnesota Røkkr home series. Very impressive fashion. Some might argue, Easy Mac. And first of all, I want to thank you for also doing analysis as you do, giving us public statistics like you do, but just doing analysis on this show for everyone in the league as I ask you questions of teams outside of the Atlanta FaZe here, including the Florida Mutineers, who happened to defeat the Atlanta FaZe in finals. But they also defeated the Chicago Huntsmen and Dallas Empire along the way, which got me thinking this has to be considered, if not the greatest, one of them, but probably the greatest tournament performance, a single tournament performance this season, simply because of them being able to vanquish the top 3 teams. And also, many people didn't really put them in this position going into the weekend. I don't think many people, I think at one point in the broadcast, they said that more people predicted Toronto to win the weekend than Florida.
They were at like 0.07% of the people picked them to win. I thought that was crazy because actually they're a really good team. I would have never picked them to beat all 3 of the top teams, and even I think that they faced Toronto round 1, right? And even though Toronto's like 12th in the standings, they're actually a phenomenal like respawn team. So I like all 4 of the people that they beat were really good teams, and I was really shocked to see them like catch so much steam at the beginning and just have it last like throughout the tournament. They put up some really good respawn performances that were really impressive, and I think their stock's definitely going to be through the roof after this tournament.
Yeah, no kidding. It was the Gorillas they faced on Saturday.
Oh, Gorillas,
they beat them 3-1. But it was a very tight series. I mean, it was 3-2 for a lot of these series for them, for Chicago and Dallas in particular. But still, they were able to clutch out, and a lot of people might not have expected that. And they would have expected it from teams like Dallas and Chicago and Atlanta as well that have proven this before. So I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about where does Florida fit now in the conversation. If Atlanta and Dallas are still battling for 1 and 2, and I still give the edge to Atlanta just based on past performance and not just because you're sitting here with me. That 3rd spot, though, I mean,
I think it's theirs.
It's got to be Florida at this point. They've won 2 championships. I mean, it's kind of weird. It's like it feels bizarre to say it because of who plays for the Huntsmen and what they've already done. But Florida has had more final showings, and Florida has had more recent success.
So they're 3-0 versus Chicago too. So a lot of people have them at like 1 or 2. I don't have them that high yet, just because one performance, even though it's an amazing performance, like I guess it makes up for my disappointment from my 0-6 performance at their home series. It makes me like they're top tier. They're at that S tier with everyone else now. I think they're very good. I think if they come out in Paris and do the same thing, or even like grand finals and very like impressive performances, I think they'll be 1 or 2. But like right now, I think 3rd is perfect for them. I still think Dallas is too. Like I think Austin, Dallas are interchangeable at 1 and 2. And then based off scrims, like if we were going off scrims, in my mind, I think they're like battling for like the 2 seed. I think New York's probably 4 for me. But just off tournaments, I think it's Chicago's a 4, and then I think London or New York's gonna be like 5 for me. But yeah, definitely really impressive.
Have you seen enough from Florida to consider them a contender to be in the World Championship discussion? Like, do you think this is sustainable for them for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit weird because it's the honeymoon phase, and it's kind of hard to tell even at Paris because it's only 1 week. It's back to back, so the honeymoon phase should still be there, and they should still be kicking like high gear right now. But I definitely want to see them like at the tail end of the season, see if they still have all the steam. I think like obviously they're going to be. I think they're a lock for at least a top 4 seed. I think they're going to be really impressive going into the tail end of the season, and anything can happen at the end of the day. I think like they could definitely shock somebody. I think they have some of the most skilled players on their team. They have a really underrated team. Skies, Pharaoh, even Frosty are really underrated. And I think they're really good players. So if they're all on fire, they could beat anyone any day of the week. So yeah, definitely in the discussion for me.
So one other thing that's very interesting is the debut of Awakening, who has this incredible tournament performance, and a lot of people were talking about him now in the discussion of the greatest debut tournament performance ever. And obviously Simp is somebody who gets brought up a lot. So I'm actually curious, did Simp say anything about that? Like, because people always point to him as having that amazing performance when he debuted, right? Like, did he say anything about Awakening afterwards?
So what I like about Chris is like he likes upcoming talent. Like he was one of the people that defended Mac, like when everyone was giving him, a little bit. And he right after the tournament, Chris actually tweeted at Awakening and said, "You fried this weekend, like fry man." And it was just really funny. So actually, he just likes when people perform well. He's a big fan of young talent coming up, and I would put Awakening. Awakening's up there in one of the like top 3, introductions into the league like that. I think that was a crazy performance by him just to beat the top 3 and then also put up big numbers, which is just insane.
So what did you notice, whether it's Awakening or just the Mutineers in general? What did the numbers tell you?
So right off the bat, I mean, Skies was absolutely insane this past weekend. Just looking at the numbers, he had a 1.32, which led the entire league at the tournament, and he was absolutely insane. What really impressed me was his domination. Even though they only play that once a series, he had a 1.81 domination KD over 4 maps. So yeah, that's
Oh my
that is just something insane. So he was disgusting this week, and a lot of people don't give him credit. All the way back from LG last year, I think UIU. He's been disgusting, and he's finally having his come up. So I'm happy for him.
Well, good for the Florida Mutineers. They are the Minnesota Røkkr home series champions, and they will be in action in Paris, and so will the Atlanta FaZe. So Atlanta FaZe losing the finals, make another finals appearance though. So to me, keeping that top 2, probably top 1 in the league. But I find it interesting that Priesta would tweet and say the team played terrible. So what is your assessment from the overall weekend? What were your big takeaways from your team?
I don't know if this is going to sound good, but second is the first loser. No one wants to finish second on our team. Everyone expects greatness. They expect, if you lose when you're putting in full effort, it is what it is. Better team won. And even though we put in 110%, usually every day, we're one of the teams that scrim every day. We watch FOD every day. We do everything every day. We scrim a lot of S&D. We do everything, and the guys work hard. And we came in second. Florida was the better team. It sucks, but that this isn't. We just aren't in good form. Like we aren't as good as in good form as we were at the beginning of the season. And I just hope after this tournament we're able to really catch fire again into the later half of the last 2 months of the season, because that's when it really matters. It doesn't really matter if we're struggling right now. I'd actually rather have our struggles now than in August. So, I'll take it. It's something to learn from. There's a lot of game film on stuff that we can fix and stuff we can learn from. So, it's a work in progress. And that's just what it is at the end of the day. You got to take your L's when you have them. And this just happens to be our third of the season, so I'll take it.
What do you credit it to? Is it a motivation thing? Is it a we don't like playing online thing? Are the numbers regressing? Like what would you credit this if you can even call it that, like this slip in play for the FaZe?
So, you know how the season usually goes is there's a lot of peaks and valleys, like league wide. So there's like, everyone will be fighting for a peak at the beginning of the season. Us and Dallas were at the top of the peak, and then everyone caught up. And now the challenge is at the second half of the season to reach that next peak, go even higher. And, everyone caught up and learned from the play styles that us and Dallas had. And it's not that we haven't put in full effort or lack of motivation. It's just finding ways to continue to get better and find ways to continue countering our own play style that we see in other teams. So that's really the next level. And that's what the end of June, July, and August is going to be all about, is learning how we can counter other teams now.
Just to address this very, very quickly, because I was just confused by it. There's no coaching change with the FaZe, right?
No, it's still Crowder. He's the head coach. Him and RJ. They're a tag team duo. A lot of times they'll change voices. So like one day Chris will be the major voice. Usually Chris and RJ. They're both there for VOD. But some days you'll have RJ really being that voice, and other days you'll have Chris. But Chris is still the head coach. RJ's still like I call him head coach V2. So we pretty much have two head coaches on the team. But nothing's changing.
I will say that when we had Crowder on Coach's Corner, which is the the show that we usually do on Mondays, where we just bring in a coach from anywhere in esports. A lot of the episodes have been Call of Duty League coaches. So when we brought in Crowder, after we were done, when the cameras or when the stream went off the air, he insisted, he actually suggested, can you please bring RJ on as a guest in the future, which we will be very happy to do. But I found it endearing in a way that he would go so far as to ask this because he cares so much about his coaching staff. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, so RJ's he's not really vocal. He doesn't stream. He's not really vocal on Twitter. So a lot of people don't know actually how smart and how good of a coach he is. No one really knows his coaching style. Besides past players. I mean, they'll tell you he's very active in scrims. He's very good at teaching players. He's really good at talking to them so they understand their mistakes and where to fix stuff. He's very smart Call of Duty wise. You can just say that just by Chris hiring him in World War II to be his personal coach. RJ was actually one of the oldest, he has one of the longest tenures. He's been coaching since 2018 for FaZe and his personal coach for Chris. So back then it was only TP, him, and Vandy. Vandy was a AM coach at the time for Allegiance, and then TP obviously was Ocal. So he's got a lot of experience. He's very smart. He knows what he's doing. So that's why he works so well with Chris, because they have very, very close coaching styles. They both learn from each other. And it's a privilege to be able to work with both of them and just be able to sit in every day and listen to what they're talking, what they say and how they say it and what they see in the game. It's really cool.
Well, I can guarantee that RJ will be a future guest on Coach's Corner. We'll just leave it at that. We'll reach out to him at some point in the future. So we talked about the teams that made the finals in the Minnesota home series. What about one team that did not? The Chicago Huntsmen. Very much a surprise to many people, especially given the group they were in. This was a shocker, I will admit. But when you look back on it, you got to wonder if this is a blip on the radar for them. And this is this will become a motivator because they have had success since the Prestini move. But I also wonder if this is a sign of things to come, because we've seen sort of this pattern before. I feel like there's a lot of flux here, a lot of uncertainty with this team. And I want to know your thoughts.
It's hard to pinpoint. Obviously, their major issue is S&D. And everyone says S&D wins championships. And that's because I think it's easier to be a good S&D team and continue to win S&D maps. If you're a good hardpoint team, it's easy for a team to upset you in hardpoint, in my opinion. You can be the best hardpoint team in the world and a respawn team in the world, and people can take maps off you. What kept us afloat, kept Atlanta afloat all tournament was winning S&Ds, and Chicago just wasn't doing that. They really struggled. Scump, really, there's only two players that did good, and that was Envoy and Formal. Scump, Prestini, and the third one, I think it was Formal, or RCD, struggled throughout the weekend. It was pretty crazy to see, because I thought they were actually a really good S&D team last tournament, and then they came in and Prestini had a .63, Scump had a .75, RC's had a .67, and they really
Like,
struggled.
these are
in First
uncharacteristic
Bloods.
numbers for them.
Yeah. So I mean, I want to say this is just a blip, but it's also, there's a lot of red flags when you're not. There's no positives at all in S&D. Just Arcides and Prasini, they were 6-20 in opening duels. So that's terrible. Their strategies didn't look good, but bright side is they're a phenomenal hardpoint team. So I just want to. I guess they just need to make adjustments, and they need to, do the same thing we're doing, but just in S&D, and just focus on S&D. Find ways to make your team work, and I think they'll figure it out. They have a lot of talent, so.
Okay, well, let's ask that same question. Will they figure it out to the Minnesota Røkkr? They failed to win a match in their own home series. They have 30 points across the last 3 events that they have played in. Now, to be fair, there was a thumb injury disclosed for Alex mid-tournament, and I reached out to Coach Saint and I asked him what is happening, and he said that just performance was taking an uncharacteristically sharp dip, and it was revealed that it was due to the injury, so they had to make the substitution. They weren't aware of it necessarily going into the weekend, or the injury wasn't disclosed, so they made the substitution when they found out about it. So that's completely understandable. Still, though, this has to be concerning for the Røkkr, because remember, Easy Mac, like we were talking about this team as the definitive 4th team after the top 3,
Yep.
and now that's very much in doubt.
So I think online's really hurting them. I think it's absolutely destroying this team. Silly got a Rex. Alex dropped a 0.5 this event, but that's completely understandable. But even before then, his numbers were dipping. Everyone was really struggling online. So I think they're going to be a good team on LAN, but it's just like with the numbers, like with their points just staying at 120, it's kind of hard to see like what seed they're going to be at for LAN, because that could really hurt them if they're going to be in if they're not going to be a top 4 team, then they're going to be at a disadvantage compared to the teams where they were at the beginning of the year at the same level as. Because I think they're a phenomenal team. I just think right now they should be in survival mode. I think their goal should just be taking 20 points per tournament at the end of this and just making it 2 champs as a high seed, because they still can. They still got 120 points. They're still 30 points behind Florida, but they're definitely. I think they're in trouble right now. Especially with Alex's injury. It's tough because they do have a little bit of break now. I hope Alex is back in time for the next tournament, but if he's not, this team's definitely in a bit of trouble.
So both those teams, Chicago and Minnesota, have the next tournament off, which is this weekend, the Paris Legion. Note the start times. They are shifted to accommodate the European audience, which means that they will start earlier in Eastern time and Pacific time. I believe 1 p.m. Eastern time will be the start of the matches on Friday. So keep note of that. Go to Call of Duty League. And Sunday as well, yeah. So callofdutyleague.com. There will be the full schedule. I'm going to give you rapid fire questions.
Okay.
In place of our Paris Legion home series preview. So Group A is Legion, Mutineers, Royal Ravens, and Dallas Empire. Group B is Atlanta FaZe, Toronto Ultra, Subliners, and Optic Gaming Los Angeles. Question number 1: does the short turnaround benefit the Florida Mutineers?
Yes, definitely. They can carry this form in. They're going to be on fire going into the next tournament. I think they're going to be. I think they're in my mind. I think they're going to make out of this group pretty easy.
Speaking of getting out of these groups easy, do you believe that the Empire and FaZe are locks to get out of their groups and make the semis?
I'm going to say our team is, just because I like our matchups, actually. Dallas, on the other hand, I think they're, don't get me wrong, like based off scrims, I still think they're, A or number 1B. But they got a tough matchup round 1. London is hitting fire right now. And then if they do make it past that, then they're probably going to have Florida. So those are very tough matchups. I think they're. I don't know. I can't say they're a lock. I can confidently say we're going to be a lock. I think we're this week's going to help us just shift around a couple little things, and I think we're going to be looking good coming back in.
There are some teams here that have had impressive showings in previous tournaments, right? Royal Ravens, Optic Gaming Los Angeles, both previous finalists, and we've put New York and Toronto in that emerging conversation. They've had impressive showings compared to where they were. Do you think that this is a tournament where a team can really level up. Maybe we see a new team in the finals, or maybe we even see someone battling for a championship and really having a good go at it.
Definitely. Just looking at our group, New York and OGLA, stocks on the rise. They could definitely make it. One of them is definitely going to make it out. My money's on New York right now. I think this tournament's actually just as loaded as the last tournament, maybe even more. I think New York's a phenomenal team, top 4 team based off of like our scrims. I think they're a phenomenal respawn team. It's just about how can they perform in S&D. It's kind of like the same thing with the Huntsmen, where they're phenomenal in respawns, but it's like S&D holds them back. So I said last tournament, I expected when the last tournament New York was in, I expected them to win. They didn't. I was really disappointed because I thought that was their tournament. Now, this is where they have to show up and have to show that they're a threat. I think they're the team that I'm looking at the most. Besides Florida, us, and Dallas, I think London's in there too. London's crazy good lately. They really found that honeymoon phase. They found the before what I thought they had wrong was pacing issues. Zero came in and fixed all of that. I think they're a phenomenal team too. So one of those 2 teams, I would put my money that they're going to be in the finals, and I think they're going to be looking really good, and they're going to shock a lot of people.
I always joke on this show that whenever you put your rankings for the season or tournament and it's the slaying rankings, I always know who's going to be number 1. It's like he's always the same person. Always Wuskin is just occupying that spot at all times.
Yep.
He's just incredible. I don't know what it is, but he's just incredible in that statistic.
This game is just meant for him. Like last year, he kind of struggled because the ICR was it wasn't a slaying heavy role. That was the Maddox. But this year, it's his gun, it's his play style. It just suits him. It suits him really good.
I don't think it's fair to ask you for predictions, but what I do want to ask you is when you look at this will be my last question before we wrap here. When you look at the other teams, even statistically off the top of your head or whatever, which team do you think plays the Atlanta FaZe really well?
So I want to say Florida just because they beat us and they really whooped us in hard points. And then Dallas is always going to be our rival. They're always going to be there battling against us. But for this tournament, just because I have a really good feeling we're going to be playing them in the second round if we make it past Toronto, it's going to be New York. I think Lamar is a really smart in-game leader. They're really good at hardpoint. They've taught us a lot. That's why I give them such high praise, just because how good they actually play in practice. Because I know the skills there. I know the strategies there. It's just making it. It's just showing it in tournaments, which should be easy online. I don't understand how it hasn't happened yet. But Tommy Zuma, this is the best I've seen him play in a while. I think Mac is disgusting. I think their SMGs match our SMGs, and their play style, their smartness in game, is on the same level as us. It's just they match up super well, and that would probably be our toughest matchup that I know will happen. So that's what I would have to give it to.
All right, we're going to end on our dream team. This is something we normally do from the past weekends. Every time a weekend wraps, a home series wraps, we pick 5 players by position. So it's not going to be 5 ARs or 5 flex players. We pick them by position. So we're going to reveal to you now our dream team in order. So number 1, we have Skies from the Florida Mutineers. Had a great, and those stats are provided by who else, by the way? You can guess who provides these stats. But yeah, Skies is our first player. We're just going to go through them one by one.
He deserved it. The other AR I put up there is Formal. He had a great event, but Skies was just next level, showing everyone why he's a star player, and just his respawn, he was just out of this world.
Yeah, 1.26 KD on hard point. 1.81 on that was the one matchup you were mentioning, right? Unbelievable. 1.8. When have we ever seen a number like that? That's amazing. Good for him.
It's not even his engagements weren't that high. It was just his in-game IQ, just finding where he has to be to block spawns, to make that play, to stop that one rotator. So he didn't have a lot of engagements, but he won all the fights he needed to win.
All right, here's player number 2. And it's going to be from the Dallas Empire. Also impressive KD stats on hardpoint. It's Shotzzy.
Yeah, he's the next thing. I think he's the real deal. A lot of people don't give him enough credit that he deserves because it's online play, but you can just see it the way he plays, the confidence he has. As soon as this goes back to LAN, he's going to be that same player. He's learned so much throughout the year. It's actually crazy to see how his game's developed. He was phenomenal in hardpoint this past tournament.
Our third player, also a young player on the Dallas Empire. It's Hook.
Yep. And this is the guy that usually gets overlooked because of how good Shotzi and, even Clay has been. Hook's usually like that guy that's in the background. You look at him and you're like, holy cow, he dropped a 2.0 that map. I didn't even know. And he was, domination, hard point again. Dallas, relied on their SMGs this past event, and he was another great slayer for that team.
From the Atlanta FaZe, representing the FaZe this weekend, it is, I feel, Celium, man. I feel like Celium is such a great player, and I feel like he's surrounded by greatness. And so if he was on any other team, we'd be like pumping his tires so much more. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's because he has so many talented players around him that, in hardpoint, he's taken more of an aggressive role. He's taken more of that, high flying role. So you're not going to see the crazy 1.3s in hardpoint unless he's on like one of the slower maps, like Azir Cave is his playground. I think he's absolutely crazy. But S&D is just he's elite. He's top of the, he's one of the, if you had to make a team around S&D, he would be my first pick. He's the true Iceman this season.
Yeah, ice in his veins, and the expression doesn't change. Remember we were talking.
No.
It was. Remember we were talking. I think the last time you were on, we were talking about how
he always has the same picture.
Like we could just put up the picture, and no one would be the wiser. They'd be like, "Yeah, that's Celium."
My favorite thing is he didn't even recognize he left his door open to his balcony, and his apartment flooded during the finals.
Oh, no.
So he's sitting there like this still, not even recognizing what's going on. He's basically in a swimming pool at the end of the match.
Oh no way! Like it was during the final.
He sent us a picture
right
after of him just flooded.
Come on, how do you not notice that? His
He's
feet
just
getting wet
in
from the
game.
water on the. Yeah, he's just like zoned in.
Goes into his living room. It's just all wet.
He's worried about hardpoint. His living room is like getting soaked. Celium. We love you, bud. That's hilarious. All right, last person is Awakening. I think this is no surprise, especially with the weekend that he had, his opening. I mean, what a way to start your career, right?
Mm-hmm. He's been known to be a good respawn player, and he came in and showed it. Florida did a good job of setting him up to be that player too. Like they didn't put him in one of the the role player roles. They let him be that second man in, so he can get the trades and he can build up confidence. And by the end of the weekend, you could see he was taking a lot more riskier gunfights that he was confident he could win. He was doing a great job of doing that this past event.
All right, let's end on this, Easy Mac. Just looking back on the season, I know that's been like a crazy Call of Duty League season, but how's it been for you, man? Like, I just want to hear about, like, for all that you provide to the community, like, it can't be stressed enough. How has it been for you? Like, just like dealing with all of everything on LAN and transitioning to online, even from a statistical perspective, like, how have the numbers been and how have they changed? Like, who's been an online star versus a LAN star? Like, what are the numbers telling you?
So that's actually my next project, is I want to see like LAN versus online correlation and see like how it all looks. But definitely, I go back to Shotzi, and it's just like at that first event, that launch weekend, everyone had such high expectations, and he came out and he was still learning. You could see that. He was still green. He still was under the guidance of the two ARs, Crim and Clay. And now you look at him and, he is the player. When you play Dallas, you're looking at Shotzi and Hook, and you're focusing on him. You're finding ways to counter him because he is so good on the map right now. It is just ridiculous. And he does it, every day. Every day he gets on, and it's just, he's playing phenomenal. So it's just, I'm like in awe of his growth throughout the season. It's just been insane.
Are there any, do you have any people in mind that you might hypothesize have been better online than on LAN? Or, are there any patterns that you're noticing?
There's no one that really stands out. Everyone's in the meme that, Dallas has been better, but, they were just as good in the last two LANs that they attended. So it's really tough to pick out one player above the other. I know there's a bunch of players that are better on LAN than they are online. But, oddly enough, I think Slasher's looked a lot better online, even though he's had a bunch of internet issues, but he's looked a lot better statistically. Maybe that's just because the teams are finding their right roles and the team's finally starting to gel. But I think even with all the online issues he's had, he's been looking phenomenal. He was in the MVP race for his tournament, the past one, even though the Optic, went out in the grand finals. But he's been looking really good, really scary. It's that time of the year for him.
Well, I look forward to that project. It's going to be very interesting to see what comes out of it when you crunch the numbers there. So that'll do it for us here on Search and Destroy. Don't forget this weekend, Paris Legion home series. Don't forget the time changes, 1 p.m. Eastern on Friday. Go to callofdutyleague.com. Check those times in your local time because they will be different than what you are normally accustomed to. Easy Mac, you're the man. Like, I appreciate you doing this, being with us for the whole show. Please come back sometime.
Definitely. Thank you for having me again. I love it. Love being on.
And thank you all for watching. We'll see you next week.